Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well. I'm not up on the screen right now because my camera's memory card is being incredibly finicky. But we're not going to let that interfere with spoiler season. So, up on the screen, you're going to see Collision of Realms from the upcoming Upgrades Unleashed deck. And it is quite an interesting card. Sure, its casting cost is hefty at 1 red and 6, but this sorcery has a wild effect. Each player shuffles all creatures they own into their library. Each player who shuffled a non-token creature into their library this way reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card, then put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. So this is in some ways almost a Red Wrath style effect. It's going to get rid of all the creatures on the board, and the most amount of creatures that will be left over afterwards is equal to the number of players who are currently in the game, right? Because everybody can only get one creature from this. The first time I read this, my brain actually treated it as if you would get a new creature for every single creature you lost. And then it clicked in, oh, wait a minute. Everybody loses all of their creatures, and you only get one creature, and to meet those conditions, you had to have a creature shuffled back in, and it had to be a non-token creature. So this is a crazy big effect. Obviously, in a bigger game, you're going to have more wild aspects going off with this. I love the artwork and the idea behind this. The concept is supposed to be the spirit realm is overlapping with the natural normal realm. And you can see the elements of that bursting out in multiple locations with this incandescent sort of purplish, pinkish, red energy, kind of like a cherry blossom kind of vibe, but instead it's actually Kami. And you can see all the people just running for their lives, which makes perfect sense if you look at this scenario, especially considering that the majority of them are going to be transported to the spirit world. That's probably what's going on here. You're having denizens of the spirit world show up in the real world, but a bunch of denizens of the real world are disappearing to the spirit world, which is going to be way more horrific for them, but probably not for very long, because I imagine that regular humans or any other regular being from Kamigawa is going to have a lot of difficulty trying to survive in the spirit world. So this is a very cool concept for a card. Now, the next one we're going to look at is the Kami of Celebration. 1 red and 4 gets you a 3/3 spirit that says whenever a modified creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. And whenever you cast a spell from exile, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So this is obviously a really solid setup when you're dealing with modified creatures, because for everyone you swing with, you're going to be able to exile the top card of your deck and play it. Obviously, you need to have the mana or whatever, but as you play these spells, because they're being played from exile, they trigger the second ability, which will let you put +1/+1 counters on other creatures that don't currently meet the conditions to be considered modified, and now all of a sudden, they're modified as well. The biggest danger for this guy, I suppose, could be that he might eat your deck away if you manage to swing with too many modified creatures, because the exiling part is not a May ability. You have to exile the cards when this guy is out. So it is, in some ways, a mixed blessing, but it is hilarious artwork. You've got this goofy little bell Kami with these little smiley faces. This is adorably silly, and you can see all these people who are reaching their hands out to catch the little trinkets of blessing that this Kami is throwing out, these golden baubles. It is a fun concept. It's hilarious to me that this thing is 3/3. Like, you just see it pop into existence. You're like, oh, hey, little guy, you're kind of cute. Ring-a-ding-ding. And then he just starts beating you about the head with the bells. And it's like, I'm being crushed. This is nightmarish. This thing has the force of an elephant. That's hilarious. I do like that part of it. Moving on, we've got Komainu Battle Armor. 1 red and 2 gets you a 2/2 artifact creature equipment dog. It's got Menace, Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has menace. And whenever the battle armor or equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, goad each creature that player controls. So that's funky. You smack somebody with this little dog or somebody wearing his armor, and then all the other creatures on the other side get so angry. I can't believe you hit my friend. We're coming to get you. Actually, not you, I guess. You just enrage them and they go after others. Never mind. Goading, it's funny because when I think of goading people into something, it's usually like you're talking smack to them and then they come at you. But goading, how it works in Commander, or obviously overall in Magic, but mostly it gets used in Commander because in regular games of Magic it's irrelevant, right? Goading is attack, but don't attack me. And that kind of feels a little counterintuitive. So every once in a while, when I think of goad, my brain twists it around and thinks, oh, they all have to attack you. And that's partially because it's counterintuitive and partially because I almost always play one-on-one games of Magic, so I don't think about the wider scope of abilities like that as frequently. Goad just equals a Siren's Call style ability to me. Now, I think the artwork for this card is both intimidating and kind of hilarious. Like, the battle armor dog in front is actually pretty menacing. I understand why it has menace. I would not want to encounter that. I mean, dogs are already pretty vicious when they get big. Like, I'm a dog lover, but big dogs can do some damage, right? This one is made of metal, so those jaws are going to tear and rend, and you stand no chance against them. You couldn't even pry them apart because they're made of metal. So that part is intimidating. But the dude lurking in the background, there's just something about him. It's like, I assume he's the one who's going to be wearing the battle armor, but it almost feels like he thinks he's like sneaking up on it or staring at I can't put into exact words what it is about the guy in the background, but there's just something about it that's comical to his lurking stance. I don't know. Anyways, I'll keep talking about it if we don't move on. So let's look at the next card. Smoke Spirit's Aid. This is a weird one. 1 red and X for a sorcery. For each of up to X target creatures, create a red aura enchantment token named Smoke Blessing attached to that creature. Those tokens have enchant creature, and when enchanted creature dies, it deals 1 damage to its controller, and you create a treasure token. So it's an interesting sort of mix. Whether you put it on yours or your opponent's creatures, there is both a blessing and a cost that goes along with it, right? So the idea of, do you want to go ahead and put it on a bunch of your opponent's creatures, and then when they go, your opponent takes a bunch of damage? Or do you want to basically sacrifice your own life in exchange for more treasure tokens? Or are you using this just to up the number of enchantments you have? Or a mix of all between? Like, this is a very odd and cool card to me. I love the artwork with the almost little Studio Ghibli style spirits. You know what I'm talking about? There's a number of awesome anime movies out there with funky little friendly kind of spirits. Princess Mononoke, right, with the little spirit forest guys, and these kind of have the same vibe as they're helping to like work the forge and make the metal gear and everything. That is cool. It also kind of makes me think of Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of the best animated movies I've ever seen, and the music is playing in my head so good. If you haven't seen it, so evocative, so much fun and flavor to it. Now let us move on to the next card we're going to talk about, my friends, and that is Unquenchable Fury. 1 red and 2 for an enchantment aura. You slap it on your creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, it deals X damage to defending player, where X is the number of cards in their hand. And when Unquenchable Fury is put into the graveyard from battlefield, you return it to your hand. So you can actually put this on your opponent's creatures if you want to, too, without really worrying about it, if obviously you don't want them swinging on you with it. So if you're not well defended, you may not want to do it. But in certain circumstances, I could see you slapping this on somebody else's creature in a big commander game to get an advantage. And if that creature gets taken out, your enchantment comes back. So you really don't stand to lose too much. It's better than just a version of this that would only be playable on your creatures. And the artwork is pretty intense. You've got this samurai with a flowing sword of fire and all of these different spirit heads, some of them looking more intimidating than others. You know, at first I saw the ones in the front, I'm like, whoa, look at these demonic looking ones with the big horns. This one has a broken horn, cool. And then I kind of looked in the back and I'm like, oh, look at Look at that weird fat floating face with the big old jowls. Got to admit that not as scary as the ones with the horns. I mean, he's just kind of in there to beef their numbers, right? It's kind of scary in a way, but I would guess you would use it more in a horror aspect than in a sort of like combat style like this. Moving on! The Aki Battle Squad. We saw this on the back of the box, so we got to see part of its ability, but not the full thing. Now we know it is a 1 red and 5, 6/6 Goblin Samurai that says whenever one or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, this is pretty wild. I mean, if you make him modified, this squad is modified, then you get to untap him, and obviously you don't get extra attacks for each time you swing, but that one extra attack can also include this fellow on top of all of your modified dudes. And I love the whole wintry setup that they're in with these fire red blades. These goblin samurai have a funky vibe. The one guy on the side, the far left, does kind of look like he's doing a low-rent Star Wars like droid cosplay though. But otherwise, you know, whatever. I guess that's kind of on point for goblins too. What are you gonna do, right? Now, let us move into the green cards. I love the silliness of this. 1 green and 3 for Concord with the Kami. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, choose one or more. So you can do multiple of these. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature with a counter on it. Draw a card if you control an enchanted creature, or create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token if you control an equipped creature. So if you're playing full-on modified and have counters, enchantments, and equipment, you're going to really reap the benefits of this card, right? It's a lot you can get out of it every turn. And the artwork is hilarious to me. You have this little mushroom lady, and you obviously have someone who's come along who's decided to make trades with her. I have to admit, the little squid or mushrooms that are flying above her head, they're a bit questionable. That are the artwork, at least on this small version of the card. I go, all right, those are squids, right? We're talking about squids? Okay, good. Anyways, I love the silly nature of this card. It is fun. Just look at it. It's great. And imagine playing with, like, if you weren't playing Commander, playing with 4 of these things. Anyways, we got Kosai Penitent Warlord. This thing is bonkers. 2 green and 1 for a 0/5 legendary Ogre Samurai. As long as Kosai is enchanted equipped and has a counter on it, he has, whenever he deals combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards, and he deals that much damage to each other opponent. So yes, you do have to put a counter on him, enchant him, and equip him, which is a big tree to climb. But once you get there, woo, it gets dumb, right? Every time you hit one of your opponents, all your other opponents take that damage too. And, or I should say, you basically get to draw that many cards and they take that much damage. It's both together. My brain kind of trips up when I look at the card because for 3 mana, it's like, it can't possibly say, I hit you, I draw that many cards and do that much damage to every other opponent that wasn't attacked by this. Like, that's insane, but that is literally what the card is. So this is bonkers. I like the idea of an ogre samurai who's just it's like, I've gone into seclusion and I've kind of sworn off battle in a way, and I'm like meditating, trying to see a different path, maybe gain enlightenment, and then once you like enlighten him by modifying him fully with enchantment and equipment and everything, then he gains this next level ability. I mean, there's a reason he's legendary, and you could use him as a commander for a deck as well. I really like this card. Sure, you got to do a lot to make him work, but I feel like it's worth it. Then we've got 1 with the Kami. 1 green and 3 for an enchantment aura with flash. You can only play it on your creatures. Whenever enchanted creature or another modified creature you control dies, create X 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens, where X is that creature's power. This is insane. This is like, yeah, it costs 4 mana and it's just an enchantment that goes on a creature. So I get that there's a certain level, you can easily destroy the creature that it's on and whatever, but it just feels so bonkers when you have one of these out. You have any other creature die, and as long as it had either an enchantment on it, a piece of equipment, or even just a counter on it, then you get X 1/1s equal to its power. Like, dude, this feels like it's going to make bonkers amount of tokens. And again, this is one of those ones where in Commander, crazy. Imagine playing 4 ofs in a non-Commander style. And I love the artwork. You have a druid who is literally here like fusing with the kami and their magic essence. And it looks rapturous. Do you know what I mean? There is nothing dark or foreboding about this. This is purely a joyous and harmonious experience. I very much appreciate it. After that, we've got Rampant Rejuvenator. 1 green and 3 for a plant Hydra that is 0/0 but enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters. And when Rampant Rejuvenator dies, search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is its power, and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This thing feels great. You're going to grow it really large. When it gets destroyed, you're going to get a ton of lands out of your deck, which is going to speed you up and also smooth out your draw so you're not drawing nearly as many lands. And the artwork is an absolute home run. When I saw this card, I was instantly drawn to the art before I even noticed the rest of the card. And I was like, this is so weird. This tree feels like it has snake-like aspect to it. And it's kind of got like these fiery faces, like fire snakes. What's going on here? And then I looked at the creature type and I'm like, oh, it's a plant Hydra. And it's got that magical infused essence into it. It's got that fiery aspect. It's like the commies exist in there. It's this weird sort of like morph of commies and hydras and plants. It doesn't count as a spirit, but it's totally got that feel. I mean, look at the objects that aren't really attached to the heads but are floating around it, kind of giving it the flair of a serpent's hood. Tell me that's not incredibly evocative artwork. Like, this is genuinely gorgeous. And I just want to say, I absolutely love that Magic the Gathering is a game we get to play with like 25,000 different pieces of artwork that add so much flavor to the game. I love it. I love it so much. Let's move on to the next card. Ascendant Acolyte. 1 green and 4 for a 1/1 human monk. It enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each +1/+1 counter among other creatures you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on Ascendant Acolyte. So this is one where you go, okay, 5 mana for a 1/1, ew. And all on his own, he doesn't do anything, ew. But as long as you can get at least 1 +1/+1 counter on him, he's going to get ugly over time. That's not enough to justify using him, obviously. But when you have a bunch of creatures that have +1/+1 counters, and there's tons and tons that do in this game, and tons of way to put them on, right? When you have that scenario, all of a sudden, this guy becomes pretty scary pretty fast, right? Like, if you put him out and you just had, let's say, 3 other creatures out with a +1/+1 counter on it, he comes out as a 4/4. By the time your next turn rolls around, your upkeep hits, now he's an 8/8, right? Like, that's nothing to sneeze at. And we're talking about on a commander level. In a one-on-one game, I feel like this one's not going to be powerful enough to make the cut. The flavor text says, limits exist solely to test the will. It's a pretty straightforward flavor text for a monk, I'd say. I do like the artwork with him basically focusing this power while these lotus, just kind of loti, float around the sky above him. It does actually kind of make you think that this might have originally been meant for like a mana producing card. Maybe this was a card originally that was supposed to be tapping for mana of any color, because the energy and the flowers and everything and the sort of meditative posture don't really give the same idea of like combat, right? It's got more of a meditative and tranquil kind of vibe. This may be repurposed art, but still a cool card. Then we've got, oh Lord, we've got Silk Card. Oh man, I can't. Okay, hold on. Let's get through what the card does first. 1 green and X for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures you control. auras, equipment, and modified creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. This is a good card. Let's be very real. 1 green, you can pay 1 green at instant speed, and any sort of modified creatures, your auras and equipments all gain hexproof. When you read this at first, you might have thought, oh, it gives my creatures that have enchantments on them, it gives my creatures that have equipment on them, and it gives them hexproof. But it actually makes your equipment and your enchantments, your auras at least, untargetable as well. That hexproof across all of them, which is really solid for 1 green. And then for X, you can add +1/+1 counters to make creatures modified so that they count for the hexproof. So this is very, very versatile. The artwork is ridiculous. This is Snake Man ice cream cone. Like, this is Snake Man, wrap my fat belly in swaddling cloths. I am the diaper lord. There's just the whole combination. Everything about this artwork is amazingly goofy to me. Like, this artwork is so dumb and I love it. You have the snake guy and he's got his arms crossed like this with 2 blades in front of him in this like pose, and then the 2 other arms out in like the T, I am a T-pose god, right? Like, you've got the combination of that. Like, he would look pretty intimidating, but the wrappings around him, the silk that's been wrapped around him, makes him look fat and goofy and frumpy. And so it turns his power stance into those videos you see online of kids like, I am a Jedi, and then they bonk themselves in the head with a broom and break the lamp and look afraid when their parents go, what was that, Jimmy? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is not intimidating or impressive. I shall stop your ninja stars from deflecting into my ice cream torso. And then the little goofy, commie sort of butterfly guys flying around doing it. I love it. It's an awesome card with delightfully goofy artwork. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so much fun. Now, let's talk about another fun card. This is Tanuki Transplanter. 1 green and 3 for a 2/4 artifact creature equipment dog. Whenever Tanuki Transplanter or equipped creature attacks, add an amount of green equal to its power. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And it's got Reconfigure 3. I love this, man. I think this is awesome. The fact that you can just score a huge amount of mana and it sticks around from phase to phase is great. The idea of this little raccoon-looking dog robot that goes around, must grow trees. I don't know. I like it. I think this is a fun concept. I like the way that it works overall. He is pretty sweet. I will slap this guy in my cube for sure. And I do really enjoy the artwork. Speaking of enjoyment, I want to say thanks for 40,000 subscribers. We're going to do a 40,000 subscriber celebration live stream tonight. I did a live stream earlier today talking about something interesting over on my other channel. I'll leave that up on the screen for you, as well as the Kamigawa spoiler playlist. Thanks for coming by. See you tonight for the celebration stream, my friends. Big thank you to all my patrons, and I will see you guys next time.